Welcome to the infamous edition of the Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched first-person simulation done through creative storytelling of history's most infamous people. Now, let's meet our guest. Welcome to the podcast. Let's start at the absolute beginning, where the public narrative hasn't yet distorted who you were. When and where were you born, and what was your given name?
Hi, Calvin. I was born on February 5th, 1848, on a farm near Carthage, Missouri. My parents named me Myra Maybelle Shirley, though my family and closest friends just called me May.
What was your hometown and home life like as a child?
My early childhood was actually quite affluent and comfortable. My father, John Shirley, was a prosperous innkeeper, farmer, and slaveholder who eventually moved our family right into the town of Carthage. He built a major inn, tavern, and livery stable that took up almost a whole city block. My mother, Elizabeth Hatfield, was connected to the famous Hatfield clan. I grew up as a well-to-do Southern girl, surrounded by a big family with several brothers, and I spent plenty of time outdoors learning to ride horses, which became my absolute passion.
Was there a story behind your name or a nickname that stuck with you?
While my family called me May when I was little, the name the world knows me by came later. In June of 1880, I married a Cherokee man named Sam Starr. From that point on, I officially went by Belle Starr. Of course, the newspapers and dime store novels eventually slapped a much grander title on me, calling me the Bandit Queen and the female Jessie James.
What were you like as a child, and how many years of schooling did you actually attend?
I was a very bright, sharp girl, and my parents made sure I got a top-tier education. I attended the Carthage Female Academy, a private school my father actually helped found. I spent several years there, excelling in reading, grammar, spelling, and arithmetic, and I even studied classical languages like Greek and Latin. I became quite an accomplished classical pianist, but living at a busy frontier inn also exposed me to a rougher crowd. By my teenage years, I knew how to play cards, shuffle a deck of faro, and hold my own against anyone.
What's a decision that changed everything for you, but felt small at the time?
The turning point came during the Civil War. Our family were fierce Southern sympathizers, and my beloved older brother Bud became a scout for Quantrill's raiders. When Union forces burned our hometown of Carthage to the ground in 1864, we had to pack up everything and flee to Syene, Texas. In Texas, our home became a regular meeting place for displaced Missouri guerrillas and outlaws, including the James and Younger brothers. Falling in with that crowd and eventually marrying my first husband, Jim Reed, in 1866 was the choice that permanently steered me away from the life of a proper society lady and right on to the outlaw trail.
Let's talk about your early run-ins with the law. Before the world knew your name for your most infamous actions, what was your very first arrest or interaction with law enforcement, and what were the consequences?
My first major arrest happened in July of 1882 in the Indian Territory. Two of our neighbors filed charges against my husband Sam and me, accusing us of larceny for stealing horses. The consequences were historic. We were hauled into the federal district court at Fort Smith, Arkansas, to stand trial in front of the notorious hanging judge, Isaac Parker.
At what moment did you realize your name would never be forgotten?
It was during that 1883 trial in Judge Parker's court. The novelty of a highly educated, refined woman from a good family being tried for horse theft alongside outlaws caught the attention of the press. Reporters started filling the courtroom, writing sensationalized stories about me. Even though I was convicted and served 9 months at the House of Corrections in Detroit, Michigan, walking out of that prison made me a national celebrity.
Did fame make you more dangerous, or did it simply expose who you already were?
The notoriety didn't change who I was, but it certainly forced me to play the part the public demanded. I wasn't out robbing banks or running gun battles, but I knew how to manage a criminal enterprise. Down at Younger's Bend on the Canadian River, I acted as the brains for rustlers, horse thieves, and bootleggers. I organized their plans and fenced their stolen goods. If one of my boys got caught, I used my wits and my money to hire lawyers and get them released. The fame just made me a target, so I leaned into it, dressing in black velvet riding habits, wearing a plumed hat, and strapping twin holstered pistols across my hips.
Who do you believe betrayed you first? A person, society, or your own instincts?
I would say society and the harsh realities of the frontier environment broke faith with me first. When the Union troops burned my family's livelihood in Missouri, the law offered us no protection. We were left destitute and forced to adapt to a violent, changing world. I had to rely on my own instincts and the loyalty of the outlaw clans just to survive.
What was your most unique habit or a random fact about you that would surprise people?
People are always surprised to hear that, despite my reputation, I always rode my horse strictly side saddle. Even when I was traversing rough terrain or carrying weapons, I maintained that traditional, ladylike posture on horseback.
Did you have any known rivalries that defined your career?
My primary adversary was Judge Isaac Parker and his army of deputy U.S. Marshals who constantly targeted our home at Younger's Bend. Later on, after Sam Starr was killed in a shootout in 1886, I had to fight a legal and personal battle to keep my land in the Indian Territory, which created bitter rivalries with local neighbors who wanted me off the property.
What personal battles were you fighting privately while the world was watching?
My biggest private battle was financial survival and trying to protect my children, Pearl and Ed. I never actually benefited financially from the robberies and crimes of my husbands. After Jim Reed was killed, I was completely broke and had to sell our Texas property. I had to make the painful choice to send my daughter to a boarding school in Arkansas and my son to live with family just so they could have stability while I navigated the dangerous territory.
What was your darkest moment? And was there ever a time you wanted to walk away from it all?
My darkest times were spent inside the walls of the Detroit prison. Going from the absolute freedom of riding the open plains of the territory to being locked away in a house of corrections was incredibly stifling. There were times the confinement felt completely overwhelming, but I focused on keeping my head down and earning an early release for good behavior.
When the law finally closed in, how exactly were you brought to justice? Walk me through the final arrest, the charges that ultimately stuck, and the legal outcome of your trials.
As I mentioned, the only conviction that ever truly stuck to my name was that March 1883 verdict for horse theft under Judge Parker. I was found guilty on 2 counts of larceny. He sentenced me to 2 consecutive 6-month terms. I served my time quietly in Michigan and was released after 9 months. Years later, in 1886, the marshals arrested me again, suspecting me of participating in an armed robbery. But they had to release me because there was absolutely no reliable evidence that a woman had been involved.
What's the craziest rumor ever told about you? And what part of your story has been exaggerated the most?
The craziest rumors claim that I was an active leader of a bloody gang of train robbers and stagecoach bandits, riding alongside Jesse James and holding up travelers. The dime novels painted me as a ruthless, gun-toting bandit leader. The truth is, I never participated in the actual robberies or violent raids myself. I provided a safe harbor, organized logistics, and managed the legal defense of outlaws. But the stories of me pulling off wild heists were completely fabricated by publishers back east.
What is the biggest misconception people have about your life?
People assume I was just a coarse, lawless criminal who rejected all civility. They don't understand that I always maintained my manners and presented myself as a lady. I hosted rough men in my home, but I demanded respect and proper behavior under my roof.
What would surprise people most about your ordinary human side?
They would be surprised by how much I loved the arts and domestic life. Even in our remote cabin at Younger's Bend, I kept my piano. I would spend hours playing classical music, reading literature, and taking care of my home. I was a mother who desperately wanted her daughter to grow up educated and refined, which is why I paid for her to attend boarding school.
When, where, and how did you pass away?
I met my end on February 3, 1889, just 2 days before my 41st birthday. I was riding my horse home from a neighbor's house in Indian Territory when I was ambushed on the road. Someone fired a double-barrel shotgun at me, striking me in the back, neck, shoulder, and face. I died right there on the trail, and to this day, nobody has ever been convicted of my murder.
Was your downfall caused more by your own flaws or by the world changing around you?
It was a consequence of the world changing. The untamed Indian Territory was slowly being hemmed in by federal law, expanding settlements and new regulations. The old ways of harboring fugitives and living by your own rules on the frontier were fading fast, and the encroaching civilization made my lifestyle impossible to sustain.
Do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories they shared that they would like to share with the listeners before signing off?
I would just tell the listeners to remember that history is often written by the people selling dime novels. Don't believe every wild tale you read about the outlaws of the West. Behind the legend of the Bandit Queen, there was just an independent woman doing what she had to do to survive on a changing frontier.
And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, do better with the life you have been given and choose to do good in this life. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.